So there I was, exhausted after swim practice, when my teammate Jake challenged me to an impromptu race. We'd been on the same college swim team for almost 3 years now, and these little competitions had become something of a tradition between us. Jake was one of those guys who seemed to excel at everything: tall, athletic, popular with everyone on campus, and despite being straight, completely comfortable with me being gay. That was something I'd always appreciated about him. In a sports environment where LGBTQ+ athletes sometimes still face awkward tensions, Jake had been nothing but a genuine friend from day one. He'd shut down locker room talk when it crossed lines, included me in everything, and treated me exactly the same as everyone else, which honestly was all I ever wanted. The challenge came after Coach Williams had already left. Most of the team had cleared out too, leaving just a handful of us doing some extra laps. One more race, Jake had said with that competitive grin of his. Loser has to do whatever the winner wants. Now, we'd done plenty of bets before, buying coffee for a week, doing the other's laundry, taking notes in the classes we shared, but this open-ended forfeit was new territory. I should have been more cautious, especially given how spent I was from the 2-hour practice we'd just finished, but something about the challenge sparked my competitive side. Let me explain why these little competitions matter to us. Swimming is inherently competitive, but there's something different about these personal challenges between teammates. They're not just about winning. They're about pushing each other to improve in ways formal practice sometimes doesn't. Jake and I have been doing this since freshman year, and I'm convinced it's part of why we both shaved seconds off our times. Plus, these friendly wagers kept things interesting during the grueling training schedule of collegiate swimming. "What's the race?" I asked, trying to sound confident despite my aching muscles. Jake suggested a 100-meter butterfly, my strongest stroke, which surprised me. What he didn't mention was that he'd been secretly working on improving his butterfly technique with one of the assistant coaches. I found this out much later, of course. At the time, I just thought he was giving me a sporting chance. I should have known better. The race itself was close. Closer than it should have been, given butterfly was supposedly my specialty. We pushed off the wall with identical timing, but by the halfway point, I could sense something was different about Jake's stroke. He'd clearly been practicing. The final stretch was brutal, my lungs burning as I gave it everything I had. But when our hands hit the wall, he'd beaten me by less than half a second. The small audience of remaining teammates cheered and laughed, some of them slapping Jake on the back as he emerged from the pool with a triumphant smile. "Looks like you owe me," he said, water dripping from his hair. But then came the twist that would make this story worth telling. Instead of naming his forfeit, Jake surprised me. "Actually," he said, "since I'm feeling generous, I'll let you pick your own punishment. Just make it good, something memorable." The other guys hooted at this, probably expecting me to go easy on myself. But there was something in Jake's expression, a look of trust, maybe, that made this moment feel important. I stood there, water streaming down my face, considering my options. This was an interesting psychological experiment, wasn't it? When given the freedom to choose your own consequence, do you go easy on yourself or prove something by making it challenging? And what would my choice reveal about me to my teammates? These thoughts raced through my mind as everyone waited for my decision. Here's where I should mention that our swim team had a bit of a reputation for outlandish dares and forfeits. Nothing dangerous or truly humiliating. Our coach would shut that down immediately, but creative challenges that usually ended up on someone's Instagram story. Last season, one guy had to wear a tutu to practice for losing a bet. Another had to dye his hair the color of our rival school for a week. These things became part of our team culture, stories we'd tell at alumni events years later. So as I stood there contemplating my self-imposed forfeit, I knew it needed to be good. Something memorable, but not self-destructive. Something that would make the guys laugh, but also maybe challenge some assumptions. I considered the standard options: singing in the cafeteria, doing something embarrassing at the next home meet, wearing something ridiculous to practice. But none of those felt right for this particular moment. "I've got it," I finally said, looking Jake directly in the eyes. "This weekend, you and I are going to that new dance club downtown, Pulse. And you have to stay for at least 2 hours." There was a moment of silence before the remaining teammates burst into laughter and oohs. Pulse was known as the most popular gay club in our college town. It wasn't exclusively gay, plenty of straight people went there too, but it was definitely known as an LGBTQ+ space first and foremost. Jake's expression was priceless, a mix of surprise, amusement, and maybe the slightest hint of nervousness. But to his credit, he didn't hesitate. "Deal," he said, extending his hand to shake on it. "But you're buying the first round." And just like that, what had started as a simple race turned into something more interesting. The guys around us were already teasing Jake, but he took it in stride, laughing along with them. As we headed to the locker room, I wondered if I'd crossed a line. Was it fair to make a straight guy go to a gay club as a forfeit? Was I tokenizing my own sexuality for a joke? These questions bothered me enough that I caught up with Jake as we were changing. "Hey, if you're not comfortable with the club thing, we can pick something else," I offered quietly, away from the others. Jake looked genuinely confused. "Why wouldn't I be comfortable? It's just a club with different music and better dancers than the places we usually go." He paused, then added with a smirk, "Unless you're worried I'll get hit on more than you. That would be embarrassing for you." And just like that, any tension I'd created in my own mind dissolved. This was just Jake being Jake, the same guy who'd never made my sexuality into something weird or different. The anticipation building up to Saturday night was interesting. Word had spread through the team about our bet, and suddenly everyone was invested in the outcome. Several teammates even decided they wanted to join us, partly to witness Jake's forfeit, and partly because, as it turned out, several of them had wanted to check out Pulse anyway, but hadn't had an excuse to go. When Saturday night finally arrived, I was surprised to find myself nervous. This had started as a simple bet forfeit, but had somehow transformed into something that felt more significant. Jake showed up at my apartment dressed better than I'd ever seen him for a night out. Nice jeans, a fitted button-up shirt that actually looked ironed, and he'd even styled his hair. "What?" he said when he caught me looking surprised. "If I'm doing this, I'm doing it right." There was something about his attitude, completely undefensive, even enthusiastic, that reminded me why we'd become friends in the first place. We met up with 5 other teammates at a bar near campus for pre-drinks. The conversation was lively, with everyone teasing Jake about whether he was ready for his big night. He took it all with good humor, even playing it up a bit. "I've been practicing my dance moves," he joked, doing an exaggerated body roll that had us all laughing. I realized that by choosing this particular forfeit, I'd inadvertently created a fun night out for everyone rather than a punishment for one person. Arriving at Pulse was an experience. The club was packed, with a line stretching around the corner. The music was pulsing so loudly we could feel it in our chests, even from outside. Colorful lights spilled out whenever the door opened, along with the sounds of people having a great time. I'd been here a few times before, but never with a group of mostly straight teammates. I found myself watching their reactions, particularly Jake's. "This place is incredible," he shouted over the music as we finally made it inside. And he was right. Pulse had recently been renovated and had one of the best sound systems in town, multiple dance floors with different music, and an outdoor patio area where you could actually hear yourself think. The crowd was diverse. Yes, predominantly LGBTQ+, but with plenty of straight allies and friends mixed in. What happened over the next few hours was not what any of us expected. Jake, far from being uncomfortable, seemed to be having the time of his life. He danced with everyone, guys, girls, non-binary folks, without a hint of self-consciousness. When a guy offered to buy him a drink, he politely explained he was straight, but seemed flattered rather than offended. "Free drink is a free drink, though," he joked to me later. Our other teammates were similarly enjoying themselves, dancing, chatting with new people, and generally having a great night out. At one point, I found myself at the bar next to Jake, both of us taking a break from dancing. "So is this what you expected when you chose this forfeit?" he asked, genuinely curious. I had to admit it wasn't. "I thought you might be a little uncomfortable, maybe learn something about how it feels to be in a space where you're not the default," I explained honestly. "But you seem completely at home." Jake considered this for a moment. "You know, I've never really thought about that, being the default most places I go. That's probably something I should think about more." He took a sip of his drink. "But also, this place is just fun. The music's better than the usual clubs, people are actually here to dance instead of just hook up, and everyone seems, I don't know, free to be themselves. It's cool." That conversation stuck with me. What had started as a simple bet forfeit had turned into something more meaningful. Not in a heavy-handed, very special episode way, but in the natural way that friendships sometimes deepen through unexpected shared experiences. By the time our 2-hour minimum had long passed, none of us were ready to leave. We ended up staying until closing time, with Jake being the last one on the dance floor. The next morning, slightly hungover but happy, I got a text from Jake. Best forfeit ever. When are we going back? And attached was a group photo from the night before, all of us sweaty from dancing, arms around each other, with the colorful lights of Pulse creating a rainbow effect in the background. He'd already posted it to his Instagram with the caption, "Lost a bet, won a night to remember." Looking back on that night now, I realized that what made it special wasn't just the fun we had, or even the boundaries we crossed. It was the reminder that sometimes the best way to connect with people is to share experiences that push you both slightly out of your comfort zones. Jake had always been a good teammate and friend, but that night showed me the depth of his character, his openness, his confidence in himself, and his willingness to embrace new experiences without judgment. The forfeit became something of a legend on our team. In fact, in the months that followed, several other forfeits mysteriously involved group outings to Pulse. It became a team tradition of sorts, a place where we celebrated big wins or commiserated after tough losses. And while I'd like to take credit for breaking down barriers, the truth is that Jake did most of the heavy lifting just by being himself, completely comfortable in his own skin and willing to dance anywhere with anyone. What started as a simple bet after practice taught me something important about not underestimating people. Sometimes the labels we assign, straight, gay, whatever, create boundaries that exist more in our minds than in reality. True friendship transcends these categories, finding common ground in shared experiences and mutual respect. Jake and I remained close friends throughout college and beyond, and that night at Pulse became just one of many stories we'd reminisce about. Significant not for its uniqueness, but for how ordinary it ultimately felt. Just two friends honoring a bet, having a great night out, and in the process, making a memory that would last far longer than either of us expected when we lined up for that fateful race. And if there's a lesson here, perhaps it's this. Sometimes the best forfeit isn't a punishment at all, but an opportunity, a chance to experience something new, to see each other in different contexts, and to realize that the boundaries we perceive between us are often more permeable than we imagine. Or maybe the lesson is simpler. Never race a teammate in your specialty stroke without checking if they've been getting secret coaching. Either way, it was one bet I'm glad I lost. Total _char_count, 13,073.